Financial stress, loneliness, racism, and violence. These are just some of the issues undocumented immigrants face as they learn to maneuver life in the United States. But one local clinic is focused on providing culturally sensitive care. In today's edition of Mental Health Monday, we go inside Clinica Romero and found even the doctors are haunted by personal trauma. For many immigrants, seeking out a better life comes with a long list of sacrifices, leaving all they've ever known behind, including family, all to flee poverty, violence, and in some cases, persecution. Emeterio Armando Carranza Sosa left El Salvador in January of 1981, while the country was in the middle of a brutal civil war in which more than 75,000 citizens were killed, many by death squads.
Los niveles de represión eran bien fuertísimos.
The repression was intense and terrible, he says. The dead were in the streets day and night, 24 hours a day. What Sosa saw and experienced was traumatic, and when he arrived in Los Angeles, the nightmares continued. Starting a new life had its challenges. Sosa didn't speak English and says the language barrier created isolation. Sosa suffered from terrible anxiety and couldn't sleep.
Y obviamente, pues, bastante deprimido, ¿no?
I also had to deal with depression, he says. We left hell because of the war, but we left family behind. 6 months after he arrived, he got a job in a shoe factory. With little experience, he said his hand was caught in a machine press and he lost several fingers. After suffering in silence for too long, Sosa went for help, and he found it at Clinica Romero in downtown Los Angeles.
No fue hasta que empecé a venir a la clínica que me enteré.
It wasn't until I came to the clinic, he says, that I learned help was available. In El Salvador, I never heard of the need for mental health or therapy. Carlos Vaquerano is the CEO of Clinica Romero.
You know, the whole issue of violence because of the gang members or the cartel in Mexico. But Central America, you know, we had wars in the early 80s, so many of us went through that trauma. And we carried it, you know, that for many years.
Vaquerano immigrated 43 years ago and shares his client's trauma. He lost 3 brothers, at least 2 killed by Army death squads. He lost his father when he was 4. And even though it's been decades, we soon saw that the wounds of loss are still very fresh.
I had already lost my father when I was 4. A lot of our community only do it when they're really in a bad shape. And that shouldn't happen.
Part of the hesitance of seeking help is the stigma that comes with admitting there is an issue. It's something mental health professionals are trying to change, but the COVID pandemic only made things more challenging.
Job insecurity. They have financial insecurity. They have transportation insecurity, food insecurity, caregiving insecurity. So what happens is this begins to geometrically multiply on their mental well-being of being able to survive all these challenges that are coming to their mind. How am I going to get through the infectious diagnosis? How am I going to avoid that infection?
Garcia says a lot of work still needs to be done to reach the community about the benefits of mental health care.
I mean, it's very challenging, understanding that we have not had enough education, and how do we advise our patients with regards to their mental brain health.
For Sosa, though, he says it took 3 years, but things finally started to get better once he went to therapy.
Desconocida para nosotros, pues,
in life, we all have problems, he says. That's normal, and the stigma of seeking mental health has been minimized. It's definitely helped me.
And we need to begin to promote that we not only need a medical home for your physical health, but we need a mental health home.
If you or someone you know is in crisis, get help from the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline by calling or texting 988.
And it's so good to see that places like Clinica Romero are actually available to people.
And that they're seeking out the help too, which is very important.
So important. Yeah. What a great story, Juan. Thank you.
Juan Fernandez, weeknights, KCAL News.